This trailer looks amazing, and the movie looks like it could be really good. Now, I was one of the biggest naysayers about this movie. I didn't like the cast when they first announced it. I've read about all the problems they've had during production and with the director, all that kind of stuff. I just kind of thought this was going to be a big train wreck. But after seeing this trailer and even the one before it, I kind of think I may have been wrong. This may actually turn out to be pretty great, and if it is, I'll be the first one to admit I'm wrong. I have no shame in that whatsoever. I just couldn't buy into it all when we were first hearing about it, but now seeing this trailer, it looks like it may be, no pun intended, fantastic. Hey guys, this is Matt, and you are watching Movie Punch for Monday, August 10th, and today I'm going to share some thoughts on the new Fantastic Four movie, which I just saw earlier this afternoon. And as you saw from my trailer review a few months back, I thought that maybe I was wrong about doubting this movie from the get-go. I was originally down on this movie, then saw the trailer, thought maybe I was wrong, and would gladly have admitted if I had been wrong, but it looks like I'm not going to have to do that because it wasn't very good at all. So I'm just going to throw out some random thoughts, and I'm going to go ahead and put a spoiler alert in here. I was going to try to do a spoiler-free review, but there's just some stuff that I need to talk about. I'm not really going to talk about what happened at the very end, but there's just a lot of things that just didn't make sense in the last act of the movie, and I can't really effectively talk about those things without revealing at least some spoilers about the plot. So I'll go ahead and put that out there. I don't know if I'll be spoiling everything, but just be forewarned that if you haven't seen it and you don't want to know anything about it, you may want to stop watching. But I got to tell you, I don't think you'll regret it, even if you do watch this and you haven't seen it, because it just wasn't that great. So I'm just going to throw out some random thoughts. There was a few things that I did like, most of it I didn't, but I'll start off by saying that the first act of the movie actually wasn't so bad. I'd say the worst thing in it was the kid who played young Reed Richards. I thought he was pretty terrible, and I don't want to be mean to the kid, but he just wasn't that great. But the first act of the movie was a pretty decent, just science fiction movie. It wasn't really a superhero movie. There wasn't anything superhero-y about it at all. It was a fairly good sci-fi movie, just sort of setting up these characters, introducing them, giving us a little bit of backstory, at least into Reed and Ben's backstory. We don't really get a lot of Sue and Johnny and Victor Von Doom in this, or at least their backstory. But we see Reed and Ben as they sort of form a friendship early on, and they work on a science experiment of Reed's, basically how to teleport an object from one place to another. Apparently they've been working on this thing throughout their entire childhood, and they get the opportunity to actually work on it for real with the Baxter Foundation when Franklin Storm and Sue Storm come recruiting him. Once they get to the Baxter Foundation, it's pretty nice. That's when we're introduced to Johnny. That's when we get a little bit more into Sue's background, how she was adopted by Franklin. We meet Victor Von Doom. We see that he's kind of a recluse, that he's been kicked out of the Baxter Foundation once already. So it's just sort of that this first act just serves to establish the characters. It doesn't do the best job at this. I mean, there's lots of movies that do it better, but it does try to build a world and build these characters and let you understand their personalities, how they act, and what they excel at. It sort of shows them as they are building a larger version of Reed's teleportation machine that he did start when he was a child. It was okay. It seemed a little bit rushed because it seems like Reed went into the Baxter Foundation. Franklin had to go get Victor, and he joined back up with the group, and then all of a sudden, poof, they have this giant machine that worked on the first try. But the movie's only an hour and 40 minutes. I mean, what are you going to do? You've got to get in a whole bunch of superhero battles too, or at least you would think they would have to do that. But at the point where the four being Reed, Victor, Ben, and Johnny enter the machine and go into the parallel or the new dimension that they teleport into, that's where everything starts to fall apart. So as I said in my trailer review, or if you've read any of the Ultimate books, this movie actually follows the Ultimate Fantastic Four in that they don't get their powers from cosmic rays. Instead, they get it through an accident experimenting with a teleportation machine. So they go to the other dimension, things go horribly wrong, and that's what gives them their powers. Now, the first weird thing that I thought about this was that it was only Reed, Ben, Johnny, and Victor who went. Sue did not go. So I was thinking, okay, well, how is she supposed to get her powers? Well, she was actually in the lab when the machine came back from the other dimension, and she just got sort of blasted with whatever energy it put off when it came back, which, scratching my head, sounds kind of weird, and I can't really explain it any better than that, but that's definitely a departure from the comics, from the old ones or the Ultimate books, is that she was, in both, she was with them through the experiment. This one, she was just kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time, so I kind of thought that was a little bit weak, but where the movie really started to fall apart for me, and where I kind of raised my eyebrows, is they come back from the dimension, they're mutated, Johnny's on fire, Reed's all bent out of shape. Did you catch that? Ben is covered in rocks. Victor actually got left in the dimension, in the parallel dimension. And then all of a sudden, it flashes forward to 1 year later. There's a brief little narration about how the government has helped them develop suits which help them control their powers, and it just shows the Thing in action, working for the military. Sue is learning how to use her powers. Johnny's out flying around, and they've all got their suits and everything. I wouldn't say everything's hunky-dory, because they don't really want to be there, and their reasoning for doing this is so that they can help construct the machine to get back to the parallel dimension, to discover what gave them their powers so they can cure themselves. Now, the other weird thing about this is when the government first stepped in, Reed got scared and he ran away. And he was gone for a year without any contact, without contacting the other members of the group, or without contacting Franklin or anything like that. He just got scared and ran away. And I just don't think that's what Reed would do in the situation. He would stick around, just like in the Tim Story films or in the comics, either of the comics. He stuck around to figure out what happened and to figure out what he could do to fix it. He felt responsible for the accident. He felt responsible for what happened to his friends, and he feels responsible for setting things right. But in this one, again, he just runs away. Now, he's not just hiding out. He's hiding out, but he is trying to figure out how to build his own machine so that he can figure out a cure. But it's just weird that he ran off and tried to do this himself. So anyway, he's eventually tracked down. The government finds him. They bring him back to whatever secret organization. I think it was Area 57, which was a little strange. But when he gets there, he just starts walking around freely like he was never scared and ran away in the first place. Now, obviously, the other members of the Fantastic Four are a little bit mad at him because he left, especially Ben, because it pretty much was Reed's fault. You know what? Actually, let me. That's a thought I had in the movie. Everybody kept blaming Reed or Franklin for the things that happened to them, but yet they were the ones who willingly went in the machine to the other dimension. So that's a part I skipped over. The reason Reed, Victor, Ben, and Johnny got in the machine and went to the parallel dimension is because the government stepped in and said they were going to contact NASA to get some other people to go first, and they wanted to be the first ones to go. So late one night, I guess after everybody went to bed and after they had been drinking, they decided to get in the machines themselves and teleport to the other dimension. So it was all of their own faults because they were the ones who decided that they were going to do this. So I don't know why Reed and or Franklin's getting the blame, because they all decided to recklessly do this. So anyway, back to Reed getting found by the government. He's working with them now. And then all of a sudden, they built a new machine. They've got a group of guys that go into the other dimension. They actually find Victor Von Doom. They bring him back. And then this is where it really, really falls apart, because Victor, at this point, is just kind of a bad dude. I mean, you could argue that he went nuts in the other dimension because he was stuck there for a year, and he did explain that that dimension gave him power, quote unquote, gave him power. This power is completely random. He has some sort of telekinesis or something. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely not an ability that he has in the comics. He has the ability essentially to walk around and make people's head explode and to lift rocks out of the ground and make the ground into formations and stuff. I can't even explain it to you. He's bad just to be bad. He feels that the Earth is dying and he wants to return to the other dimension because he says that's home now and that's the place that gave him his power. Okay, I buy that, I suppose, but I mean, he has no real motivation. So he is able to transport back to the other dimension. He starts, and as soon as he gets back there, he builds something. And this is where it's gonna really, I know I'm all over the place, but this third act makes no sense at all. I mean, there must have been an entire third of a movie cut out here, because all of a sudden he's just back in the dimension. He doesn't even build something, he just makes the ground shoot up into like this pyramid form, and then all of a sudden there's a beam that comes out and it's somehow able to open the gate into our dimension and start sucking up the Earth. It sounds crazy, but that's exactly what happened. They didn't explain anything. So the Fantastic Four, they're pretty much the only ones left in this military facility. They fly up into the weird wormhole thing and they come back down in the other dimension, and then and it's like a 10-minute fight, if it's even 10 minutes, with Doom. They manage to defeat him, get back to our dimension, and that's pretty much it. I mean, it was so disjointed. I mean, it felt like it was just piecemeal together. It felt like there was so much cut out of the third act. It made no sense whatsoever. Apparently, Johnny Storm, you know, he sets himself on fire and he can fly around, but apparently that also gives him the strength and ability to fly straight through solid rock and knock down these big rock columns or whatever. It was just pretty bad. Now, I don't blame any of this on the cast. I kind of think that they were all a little young and maybe they were miscast, but they were all great actors, and I mean everybody. I mean Franklin to Reed to Victor, they were all really great. I just think they didn't have a lot to work with, so I don't blame any of this on them at all. There's been a lot of talk on Twitter about whose fault it is. Is it Fox? Is it Josh Trank's fault? He's pointing the finger at Fox. I don't really know who to blame. I do not blame the cast. They did the best they could with what they had to work with. But what they had to work with just wasn't that much. So, I don't know. I don't know. Supposedly a sequel's already been greenlit. I can't imagine they're actually going to make one after the train wreck that this was. Again, it's just really the biggest problem was just the last half of the movie, because none of it just all happened so quickly with no explanation as to anything that happened. You were just supposed to just understand what was going on, and I wanted to know how things were happening. Doctor Doom was pretty terrible. His head, I mean, I don't want to get too nitpicky. He didn't look like Doom. His head was way bigger than his body, and his powers were weird, and it just didn't make any sense. And he was just, like I said, he was just bad to be bad. But they somehow managed to take him down. They managed to take him down just through sheer brute force. I mean, Reed in these situations in the comics usually comes up with some kind of brilliant contraption, or he uses his mind, but instead he just punched Doom a few times, and apparently it's still hard in 2015 to make stretching limbs look realistic. I mean, I don't know how much CGI work we've seen over the last 15 years or so, 20 years, 30 years. But they still can't get stretching arms and limbs to look realistic. This was only marginally better than those types of effects from the Tim Story films, which I thought were terrible. Human Torch looked okay. I did like the use of Sue's powers in this movie. Now, they were a lot better than what we saw in the Tim Story films. It was actually closer to the book, where she was creating force fields and actually making them fly and encompassing the others in protective force fields. That part was pretty good. I also liked how the Thing looked in this compared to the other movies. He looked pretty good. He didn't have the blue eyes, so, you know, he's the ever-loving blue-eyed Thing, and he didn't have the blue eyes in this. But you know, he looked all right. The voice kind of caught me a little bit off guard. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. It just was. I thought they could have done better, but they could have done worse. But he looked great. He didn't wear any pants, and I was hoping maybe at the end he would get pants. And he never did, and that bothers me because I felt like I was staring at his bare rock ass the whole time, and his little thing wasn't there. It just disappeared. So I don't know if it fell off or how he goes to the bathroom or what. But I was kind of disappointed by the end. They didn't have the traditional suits. They still had the suits that they wore throughout the movie. Although Reed's, you know, the one that he created one for himself after he ran away, but he eventually got one near the end of the movie. But it was just, it was pretty bad. At the end, they said they needed space to work. They were working with the government. They said they needed space to work. The government said how much space? They said a lot. So I'm thinking, okay, here we go, back to the Baxter building. But instead, they have some random facility out in the middle of the woods or in a mountain or something. There's a lot of people working there. And it was explained that they all work for the Fantastic Four now, which doesn't really make much sense. Why? You know, they've got these 4 people who just did one. They saved the world, but they're just 4 kids, and you know, they haven't had a lot of experience. But all of a sudden, they're running this big place. I mean, it just didn't make much sense. They came up with the name Fantastic Four right at the end, but even that was super cheesy. So, all in all, a terrible second half to a movie with a mediocre first half, pacing problems all over the place. Effects were good, acting was good, story just wasn't good. I just can't recommend seeing this. Maybe if you're super bored, you pick it up for a couple bucks at Redbox when it comes out, or maybe watch it when it comes on HBO. But it just wasn't great. Really disappointing. Really gives me hope that the rights will revert back to Marvel at some point, but I'm not holding my breath. I think Fox has the rights for another several years, so I'm not holding my breath anytime soon. But it just wasn't good. And you know, if I could go back in time 3 months, I'd smack myself and saying, no, you're not wrong. This is terrible. The trailers are misleading. It just wasn't good. So anyway, that's me rambling. That's just some random thoughts on Fantastic Four. Again, not a great movie. Don't go see it. I'm kind of sorry that I did, but hey, it is what it is. So anyway, if you want to check out some other videos that we post, or some of the ones that we've already done, you can subscribe below. And of course, it's at youtube.com/nerdpunch. We are also at Twitter, Twitch, and Facebook, all of those /nerdpunch. And of course, you can go to nerdpunch.com to check out all the other nerdy stuff we're checking out online. And you can check out our schedule as well of upcoming videos that we have planned. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Bye.